Look around you. The lights are dim, the hum of low conversations blends with the hiss of an espresso machine, and there's an unexplainable tension in the air. You stroll in, half distracted by your own thoughts, when you notice a solitary figure seated at a corner table. Something about the figure's posture or the shape of their face hits you, like a forgotten memory straining to resurface. As you approach, every step feels weightier, as though you're trespassing on forbidden ground. Who is this person? Why does the atmosphere feel so charged and electric? You finally stand right before them, and you realize you're staring at the younger version of yourself, maybe 20 years old, full of uncontainable energy and untamed dreams. But here's the unsettling twist. This younger self does not recognize you. There's no jolt of recognition in their eyes, only a polite confusion accompanied by a faint curiosity. In that moment, your heart races not from joy or nostalgia, but from an inexplicable dread. Everything you thought you knew about self-reflection or personal growth is tossed aside. This is not a cozy trip down memory lane. This is a confrontation with the raw, unpolished version of who you used to be. Suddenly, the younger you tilts their head and beckons you to sit. Their eyes bore into yours, and a slew of questions bubble silently beneath the surface. Will you have the courage to face a version of yourself that hasn't been jaded by time and excuses? Before you can rationalize the situation, the younger you opens their mouth to speak. In a single breath, the unraveling of your complacent notions begins. Your younger self speaks first, not you. Something in their voice is both naive and cutting, as if they possess a clarity you've lost. They look you straight in the eye and ask, "What happened to us? We had dreams that were bigger than the sky. We stood on the edge of risk without flinching. When exactly did that fearless spark fizzle out?" Their tone isn't bitter, but it's hardly gentle. You sense an undercurrent of disappointment, like they've realized your present reality might be a betrayal of everything they once believed. You open your mouth to respond, but the words don't form. Instead, a wave of defensive justifications flood your mind. Obligations, bills, the real world you had to face. Yet each excuse feels hollow under their unwavering gaze. You remember the sense of exhilaration that once swept through your veins, the nights you spent imagining wild possibilities, the mornings you woke up craving to create, discover, and transform. All that vanished behind caution, behind the stories you told yourself about practicality. Your younger self doesn't let up. "We promised we'd never settle," they remind you, leaning forward in disbelief. "We said we'd break every cycle we hated, but here you are, tucked inside the very comfort zone we once swore we'd avoid. When did you start lying to yourself, pretending this was enough?" The question cuts deep. Somewhere along the line, you convinced yourself that it was normal to compromise, to shrink, to tidy up your passions into something more marketable. Now that you're confronted with the rawness of who you used to be, you start to realize just how much you've left behind. And maybe, just maybe, it's not too late to recover what you lost. Everything in you wants to label this experience as impossible. How can a younger version of yourself be sitting there, breathing the same air, alive in the same moment? Yet before you dismiss it as a delusion, your younger self shatters that comfort. "You think I exist only in your past," they say, voice low but charged with conviction. "But I've been here all along. I am every spark of rebellion you felt when life tried to confine you. I am every knot in your stomach each time you settled for less than the truth." A strange chill runs down your spine as you realize that your younger self is not just a memory. They're not tethered to a timeline long gone. Instead, they are a living fragment within you, stirring every time you make a choice that strays from your core. Their presence suggests time isn't the linear path you always assumed. Instead, it loops, folds, and weaves through your consciousness. In the quantum realm of your identity, all versions of you might be existing simultaneously, resonating at different frequencies. You begin to question every moment you dismissed your intuition. Was that actually your younger self trying to speak up, to drag you away from the ordinary path? "You brushed me aside," they continue. "Every time you chose fear over possibility, every time you apologized for wanting something more. I never stopped shouting, but you got too good at drowning me out." The air in the cafe grows heavier, as if the walls themselves are leaning in to eavesdrop. That's when it hits you. Maybe ignoring your inner voice was never about losing your younger self at all. Maybe it was about silencing a part of yourself that remained very much alive, waiting for the day you'd finally listen again. Your mind spins with possibilities you never considered before. Could it be that every choice you make reverberates across the continuum of who you are? If your younger self truly lives on within you, then every moment of self-betrayal or awakening has cosmic echoes. The weight of that realization hits hard. It's not just about missed opportunities or abandoned dreams. It's about recognizing an ongoing dialogue between all versions of you. Past, present, and future might be whispering through your impulses, your doubts, and your gut feelings. You see tears shimmer in your younger self's eyes. They're not tears of regret alone, but tears of recognition, a silent plea that you stop treating life as a given. "We used to think anything was possible," they murmur, voice loaded with the vulnerability of someone who sees potential everywhere. But you started believing the world was small, that your talents should be funneled into something safe. It stings because it's true. You remember the first time you decided to play it safe, the moment you equated ambition with risk and risk with failure. Suddenly, the walls of the café seem to pulse, each shadow flickering with the memory of a path you didn't take. The emotional rush feels overwhelming, as if unseen forces are pulling you to reevaluate everything you once held as certain. You ache with the knowledge that your younger self never vanished. They simply waited in the margins, hoping you'd reintegrate them into your day-to-day decisions. And for the first time in a long while, you realize you don't have to walk away from who you were. You can merge those old aspirations with your current wisdom, forging a new path that neither denies the past nor fears the future. An uneasy silence swallows the conversation. Your younger self has challenged you to face truths you've carefully buried, and you're torn between gratitude and terror. You glance around the cafe, half expecting everyone to be staring. But no one else seems to notice the uncanny dialogue unfolding at this small, secluded table. It's as if the entire world has paused, granting you a private stage to wrestle with your own soul. A flicker of determination awakens inside you. Oddly enough, you start to see the cracks in your own cynicism. Perhaps the only reason you gave up certain dreams was because you never truly believed in your capacity to reshape reality. Maybe your younger self wasn't naive. Maybe they simply saw life through a lens not yet fogged by disillusionment. The question that looms: do you continue along the safe, predictable route, or do you reignite that fiery curiosity that once had no bounds? At that moment, a server approaches with a fresh cup of coffee, placing it in front of your younger self. There's something surreal about watching them reach for the cup, like observing a living, breathing possibility that you thought existed only in memory. You realize you can't just walk out of this cafe and pretend it never happened. The weight in your chest demands action, a shift in how you perceive both your past and your future. Without saying a word, your younger self takes a slow sip and locks eyes with you, silently urging you to make your move. The clock is ticking, and your decision is no longer just about you. It's about every version of you that ever dared to dream. The younger you straightens up, as if sensing that you're finally on the cusp of a breakthrough. There's a flicker of empathy in their gaze. This isn't about condemning you, but guiding you to confront buried truths. You begin to shuffle through the mental clutter of your experience, the illusions you bought into, the patterns you repeated, the regrets you tried to forget. Each of these was a fork in the road, a chance to either honor or deny the essence of who you are. A jolt of memory surges. The day you let a powerful ambition slip away because someone said it was unrealistic. Another memory, the moment you opted for an easy path just to avoid criticism. It's a barrage of reflections that prick your conscience, pushing you toward the uneasy realization that you've lived a fraction of the life you once envisioned. You want to ask your younger self for forgiveness, yet something says you might need to earn that forgiveness from yourself first. You sense a faint stirring of hope. If time isn't strictly linear, if the shadows of your choices ripple in every direction, then perhaps it's still possible to rewrite the emotional imprint of your past. You don't get to fix the future by hating your present, your younger self says softly. But you do get to decide what story you'll tell from this moment on. It's a hint of resolution, a nudge toward the idea that all is not lost. Yet the tension lingers, because transformation demands more than acknowledgement. It demands true, sustained action. The question now is whether you're ready to commit to that. Your younger self exhales slowly, their expression hardening into something that almost resembles a final ultimatum. Maybe you don't need me at all, they say, voice cold enough to rattle your composure. Maybe you just need to listen because I never left. I've been here, behind every moment of doubt, behind every pang of dissatisfaction, waiting for you to remember what we once stood for. The directness feels like a slap in the face, not meant to coddle, but to awaken you to the stakes of ignoring your own essence. Resentment flares in your chest for a second. Who is this younger version of you to judge every compromise you made? But then you realize, they're not judging, they're warning you. If you keep drifting, keep burying those impulses that once lit your path, you risk becoming a husk, forever haunted by the echo of what could have been. You think of all the people who wake up one day in a life they don't recognize, wondering when exactly they lost themselves. Could that be you in another decade if you don't heed this moment? Silence stretches between you, charged and heavy. Your younger self pushes the untouched coffee cup toward you. You still have time, but it's running shorter than you think, they say. Their voice resonates with a tone that feels neither angry nor pitying, but urgent. This isn't about giving you a gentle pep talk. It's about hammering home that ignoring your authentic self can unravel the tapestry of your entire life. The question isn't whether you have dreams left. The question is, will you let them die quietly, or will you resurrect them before it's too late? Your younger self locks eyes with you one last time. The question lingers. Will you walk out of this cafe unchanged, or will you choose to rewrite your story? Before any closure can sink in, they simply vanish, leaving you with an ache where fear once lived. That ache is the call to question everything and cultivate the life you once promised yourself. Are you brave enough to tear down the comfortable walls and rebuild with raw honesty? Let this moment haunt you, push you, and ignite you. Go on. Disrupt your routine, dare to dream, and comment below with one choice you'll make today that your younger self would applaud.